Thank you very much for that kind welcome. It's a great pleasure to be here at European Utility Week and to be here in Amsterdam. In the United States and in the state of Illinois, we're engaged in an important dialogue about energy production, its environmental impacts, and a technological and communications revolution that will enable a dramatically more efficient and connected grid. I'm pleased to have a chance to extend this dialogue with you here today on a new continent. And I hope my remarks will give you insight into ideas about what we're doing in America and specifically in my state of Illinois. We have much to learn from each other. It's appropriate that this year's European Utility Week is being held in one of Europe's smartest cities. Amsterdam has become a shining example of smart city capabilities, not just for Europe, but for the world. Here, the leveraging of technology and data to solve problems has been applied over the last decade to build one of the world's greatest smart city platforms. The smart city concept is a microcosm of opportunities that can be unleashed through today's energy revolution. It helps us understand the strategies to maximize the potential created by technological innovation and the Internet of Things. Those strategies include leveraging existing data sets, forging alliances to maximize customer value creation, engaging customers to devise smart solutions for their own homes, building iterative pilots, and maintaining strong leadership. People sometimes refer to smart cities as future-proof cities, meaning they can adapt to whatever course the future takes. And that's exactly what we want to do with the electric grid, to make it future-proof to the greatest extent possible. There are many conversations underway in the United States and in my home state of Illinois to do that. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about where I'm from and what we've done to arrive at the edge of this energy revolution. I lead the Illinois Commerce Commission, which is the public utility regulator for the state of Illinois, the fifth most populous state in the United States, with over 13 million residents. As I'm sure you know, Illinois is home to Chicago, the third most populous city in the country, and a true global city, which by some measures has the fifth largest GDP of any city on the planet, trailing only Tokyo, New York, Los Angeles, and London. Chicago has been called the most American of American cities because of our rich history of integrating wave after wave of immigrants and giving immigrants both the opportunity to create a new life and future for their families, while also giving them the space and freedom to retain much of their cultural heritages. In fact, Chicago's storied place in the history of the development of public utilities begins in the late 1800s with an immigrant from the UK named Samuel Insull, who was Thomas Edison's personal secretary and one of the founders of the General Electric Corporation. Seeing opportunity in Chicago's potential for growth and strategic placement at the crossroads of the nation, Insull set out to consolidate the city's widespread and disconnected private electricity production. Insull intuitively understood that the electricity business would depend on economies of scale and raced to build a generation and distribution network, but without really knowing what the economics of his invention would be. According to his biographer, Forrest McDonald, Insull described what he was doing as massing production, later changed by a publicist to mass production, years before the term was attributed to Henry Ford. While pricing was ad hoc, Insull relentlessly strove to cut the price of electricity and increase load to lower marginal cost. He was the first to recognize different classes of customers, invented early forms of rate design, used demand response, and was the first to conceive of state regulation of utility monopolies. I'm sure you'll all be surprised to learn that it was to avoid corruption at the local level in Chicago. But progress marches ahead. Since Insull's pioneering time, Illinois universities have had a major role on the ongoing development of technology in energy and engineering, the most important of which was certainly the work of Enrico Fermi and his team to launch the atomic energy age at the University of Chicago. Illinois has two major utilities, Commonwealth Edison, which was originally founded by Samuel Insull, and Ameren, that provide electricity to the vast majority of Illinois' 6 million customers. The state is served by two regional transmission organizations, PJM, which was the world's largest competitive wholesale electric market until the recent creation of the European Integrated Energy Market, serves parts of northern Illinois, including Chicago, and the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, or MISO, which transmits electricity to the rest of the state. Illinois is among a handful of states that began deregulation in the late 1990s, nearly a century after the birth of the public utility monopoly in Illinois. Subsequently, in 2002, the state passed a law that made it possible for consumers to choose their electric supplier. The Illinois Commerce Commission is charged with certifying competing electric suppliers and promoting the concept of electricity choice to Illinois residents. Today, we have nearly 100 retail electric suppliers in the state of Illinois. Over the last 6 years, two additional new Illinois laws have accelerated the transformation of our energy landscape. First, the Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act of 2011 created a long-term $2.6 billion investment plan to upgrade and digitalize the existing grid. The law also included provisions for reliability, subjecting utilities to a recovery mechanism tied to outage duration and frequency. Today, almost 4 million smart meters have been installed in Illinois customers' homes, and the full statewide rollout of advanced metering infrastructure will be completed by the end of next year, with a total of 6 million smart meters. Utilities can now leverage data from the smart grid to give customers more insights into their usage, offer different customer pricing programs, and improve reliability. Just last fall, Illinois adopted what has been called the most significant climate and clean energy policy in our state's history, and one of the most innovative pieces of energy legislation enacted by any state in recent years in America. The Future Energy Jobs Act, or FEJA, promises a smarter and more sustainable energy future by dramatically increasing the state's investment in energy efficiency, stimulating growth in renewable energy, and creating zero emissions credits for no carbon energy production. The legislation will reduce an estimated $12 to $15 billion in new capital spending on energy efficiency and renewables through 2030. The Environmental Defense Fund, a national environmental advocacy organization in the United States, estimates that the law will reduce harmful carbon dioxide emissions by more than 33 million metric tons annually. Combined with the ongoing impact of market changes on the fossil fuel industry, this means that Illinois will likely reduce its carbon emissions from the power sector by more than 50% from 2012 levels by 2030. Across America, governors like Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner and big city mayors like Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, and innovative consumer advocates like David Collada, who is here today, continue to boldly lead efforts to modernize the electrical grid, making it more reliable, resilient, efficient, distributed, and fair for consumers. Chicago Mayor Emanuel recently made a commitment to shift electricity use at nearly 1,000 government buildings to 100% renewable energy by 2025. And the state's renewable energy portfolio requires 25% of all energy to be from renewable sources by 2025. To leverage the momentum created by these laws, the Illinois Commerce Commission just launched a project called Next Grid, which will be a consumer-focused effort to study ways to leverage the state's restructured energy market, investment in smart grid technology, and significant expansion of renewables and energy efficiency that result from FEJA. It's based on a growing sense of both opportunity and urgency among Illinois energy stakeholders to map out a future of our energy system So our policies are proactive and take advantage of new technologies instead of reactive policies that slow progress and innovation. What differentiates NextGrid from similar efforts in other states is that our process will be facilitated by academics and builds upon one of the most advanced smart grids being deployed anywhere in the world today. Our lead facilitator team is from the esteemed Computer and Electrical Engineering Department from the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. The department will leverage their educational experience to elicit a robust exchange of ideas among all stakeholders, utilize their network of leading academics to inform policy conversations and ground deliberations in real technical understanding of the grid and its capabilities. It's really important that this process includes and empowers the customer, and so we'll present working group findings at public meetings throughout the state. The final deliverable for NextGrid will be a report that will provide a range of actionable recommendations aimed at empowering customers and communities, driving economic development, optimizing the electric utility industry, and creating a 21st century regulatory model that supports innovation. Illinois is not alone in this effort. Similar efforts have or are currently taking place in states like New York, California, Massachusetts, Maryland, Ohio, and Hawaii. It's clear that there's a real sense of change in the American energy industry, and it's driven these states to map out a future vision for the industry and recommended pathway for the future. Our technology may be vastly different, and yet many of the same issues and challenges faced by Samuel Insull more than a century ago are still with us today. Advanced metering, network effects and economics, efficiency and system management, rate design, regulation, and even politics. The difference is that in today's technological and information-driven world, advances in both distributed generation and end-use technology like electric vehicles are giving customers unprecedented levels of customization and control of their energy usage and services, and subsequently shaping new expectations. These technologies have considerable implications for the physical grid, which utilities, regulators, and others are seeking to address. Advanced metering infrastructure, the introduction of many new digital devices, and the Internet of Things have unlocked massive new data sets, which innovative developers are using to devise new applications for energy consumers. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, there are currently more than 60 million installed smart meters in the United States, representing about a fifth of all electricity customers that will eventually be online. This figure will be dwarfed by the number of smart pieces of equipment on the network itself, and automated and electric self-driving cars and trucks are in the not-so-distant future. According to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, electric cars in the United States will outsell fossil fuel-powered vehicles in the next 2 decades as battery prices plunge, displacing about 8 million barrels of oil a day. This shift will raise fundamental questions for the future of the energy system. One of the biggest revolves around the role of the utility in this future. Utilities have begun to adapt their business models, and as you know, there are lessons of both opportunity and peril for American utilities to learn from their European counterparts. Other questions that must be tackled include: how do we maintain reliability and resiliency in a more distributed grid? What does fair compensation to distributed energy resources look like? What is the appropriate use of consumer data? How do we ensure that we don't unfairly burden certain market participants and vulnerable groups? And finally, a question that I spend a lot of time thinking about: how does the role of the regulator need to evolve in this new reality? While the regulator's role will need to be dynamic to keep pace with the changing energy landscape, there is already growing clarity about certain core functions and emerging responsibilities. I view as paramount the responsibility of the regulator to align the focus of these rapidly evolving technologies and capabilities on the needs of the consumer. As a steward of both public trust and public dollars, the regulator must ensure that the reliability, resiliency, security, and affordability of customers' energy service always comes first. The new capabilities of a smarter grid also require a renewed focus on the privacy and acceptable uses of consumer data. In addition to ensuring that evolving customer needs are being met, the emergence of the transactive energy market broadens the regulator's responsibility to include facilitating customer participation and ensuring that all customers across socioeconomic boundaries can access the benefits of such a platform. Since customers are far from homogeneous and their desire and ability to be active and informed varies greatly, regulators will have to craft regulatory frameworks that strike the right balance. For utilities and third-party providers, regulatory structures will need to incentivize, not stifle, innovation that opens up new or increased value to the consumer. This will require the kind of creative thinking that resulted in innovative energy efficiency funding for utilities and a strengthened energy renewable portfolio standard in our Future Energy Jobs Act that passed last fall. It's also important for regulation to not just continue to keep up with, but hopefully to pull ahead of emerging technology and its anticipated impacts on the grid. Future-proofing the grid will include anticipating interconnection, system planning, and communications needs. For example, we can reap additional benefits of advanced metering infrastructure and smart city applications when data can be transmitted in real time to enable real-time solutions. Applications including street light controls, smart parking, traffic light controls, traffic management, and EV charging stations would all benefit from a communications network with increased speed and capacity. On the grid side, more instantaneous bidirectional communication of the kind supported by fiber technology would enable real-time system monitoring and management of energy use, maintenance needs, distributed generation, and home smart systems. It would also benefit critical infrastructure through increased connectivity and real-time cybersecurity monitoring. The challenge to regulators will be both to create incentives and guidelines for investments that will future-proof the grid and leverage the step changes in communications and technology that we expect. Finally, I believe one of the most important roles of the regulator can and should play during this transition to a new energy future is to engage stakeholders, facilitate necessary dialogue, and find innovative ways to balance stakeholder interests. In Illinois, we've made huge strides with the recently passed legislation, but the next grid process is a critical step. It's my hope that this process will enable the forging of unlikely alliances, the development of consensus around critical elements of our future energy system, and proposals of actionable recommendations to set us on a path for the future. And I invite you to be a part of our Next Grid process. You can find more information at nextgrid.illinois.gov. The energy revolution is upon us, but we can't allow the amazing and exciting innovations surrounding the energy sector to distract us from our primary function. Innovation is not an end into itself. Innovation is the means to better serve our customers, our community, and our planet. I greatly look forward to learning more from you this week and taking back innovative ideas and approaches that can inform our thinking in Illinois and the United States. In turn, I hope that our efforts in Illinois will not only shape our local energy industry, but will continue, as they have for more than a century, to provide value leadership in our global journey towards a new energy future. Thank you for your attention.